Welcome to another weekly featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, James Moffat, where he will gracefully take our featured guest on a personal and business journey and stories that will inspire, educate, and engage you.
Hello and welcome to another Friday Featured Business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, myself, James Moffat. Today we have our 144th guest. Right, I'm going to let him introduce himself in a minute and where he's from. So Darren Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, James. It's good to be here.
Absolute pleasure. So there's a bit of history between us because we're both in the same publishing group. So both authors, actually, and completely different authors. But we met there and, we're just going to take Darren on a journey from his childhood to where he is now. We're going to touch on the book that he's written, also the book that he's writing because it's a series, and make those available as well so you can see all the links and everything at the end. The show will be made available on YouTube for the video and Spotify for the audio. So, Darren, let's make a start. So, firstly, as the listeners like to know where you're from. So, where are you originally from and where are you living now?
Well, I was born up in Michigan and wasn't there for long. We had an apartment fire. And after that fire, we moved down to a family in Texas. So I grew up in Texas until I was about 11. And then from there came to California. I've been here ever since.
Wow. So how old were you when you had the fire then? And could you not stay there? I mean, have it rebuilt and then stay, or you wanted to move on?
Well, I was only 4, so I didn't have a whole lot of say in it. But we had family in both Michigan and in Texas. And my parents just decided to go down to Texas and get away from things for a while. So,
all right. I mean, the fire was an accident, or?
I forgot which floor we were on, but the guy down in the basement had his little heater a little too close to a curtain. So, my mom tried to wake me up, and I kept going back to sleep. So after 3 times, I finally got up, and we were able to run out. And I'm a heavy sleeper.
Yeah, you must be. I mean, for that. But everybody was okay.
Yeah, we were all fine. It's that I know of, nobody suffered any sort of damage.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so then you moved to Texas. You don't really have a Texan accent?
Oh, no. I left Texas when I was 11. So I had it for a while, and people liked to talk to me. And then after I lost it, not so much. So I've been in California, like I said, since 1986.
Right. And in particular, LA?
Mainly, well, we came here in La Mirada and then from there up to the desert. So we were in the high desert for since 86.
All right. And you like it there then?
I never liked it there. I came from Texas. You could grow things. So you get up to the desert and it had clean air and you had, there were good things about it. The desert has beauty, but I like to grow things. So the gardens and all that was a little harder. But we had family there too, so we stayed there.
All right. And just going to ask about your interests. So you like growing things, but it's not just growing things. I mean, as a kid growing up, typically, what did you like doing?
Well, we didn't have like the video games and all the different things now. So, and being
which is good, which is very good.
Yeah, and my mom liked to kick us outside. She said, "Go to explore and just pretty much get out of her hair, I guess you'd say, and go out in the desert and just find things, build things, do things." I put a zip line in our backyard, swings. Didn't have all the parts for bikes, so we'd take the bikes apart and assemble them in different ways and make stilts and just all sorts of things.
Now, I love it because that reminds me of my childhood. Also, we didn't have video computer games, and looking back, I'm so glad that's kind of a blessing not to have them, because my kids are quite young, and all of them and their friends are addicted. You've got to drag them off them or hide them and put them away, and it's terrible because it's the first thing they think of. So I liked it. Likewise with my parents, they'd kick me out the door and say, "Come back when you're hungry," right? Typical thing, right?
Yeah.
Or when it's dark. But you get used to the dark when you're outside, so you don't actually notice it getting dark. And then when you do come back, you say, "Well, you're late." And they say, "Well, you say come back when it's dark." So you could never win, but it was great because you had to use your imagination, and you could think of it, many things. But I love what you said about the creativity in the way you could get. I mean, we couldn't afford like a new bicycle. So you would find bits and pieces of old ones and junk ones, and then you take the bits off that you could reuse and kind of make your own bastardized bike, but it worked. And that was your pride and joy because you made it.
Oh, that's important. When you build that, it's a whole different feeling than going out and buying it or something else. And but you also learn a lot, because when I found you put the forks of one bike into the rear tire of the other bike, it reacts totally different from like a tandem bike. So there was a lot of learning lessons, and I won't tell you I didn't get hurt a few times, but it all made you stronger, wiser, better.
Yeah, no, I love it. I just remember it just made me think that when I was a kid, we used to kind of show off with our bikes that you could go with no hands, right? And I remember going down a hill, and there's a bend, and you had to go around the bend. So you had to kind of lean the bike over so you could go around the bend. And I remember falling off that and skidding myself, right? And yeah, I look back and laugh at it now. But when I see my kids doing it, because I don't know, it just seems to be a natural thing that you want to do. Oh, I can go no hands, right? So they go no hands. And I'm thinking, oh, no, you're going to fall off like I did. And I tell them the story that when I fell off, but they still do it. So, but you're right. Is it kind of that learning experience at the same time?
Well, there's two ways to learn. You either listen to someone who's done it and take their advice, or what most of us do, go out and do it ourselves and may or may not fall and do what they did, but you'll learn.
Yeah. So growing up, you had a big family then. I mean, you have many siblings.
I have two older brothers, three younger sisters, and not all from the same father. So we grew up mainly with my stepdad. Wasn't the best father figure, I'll tell you. So I'll go back a bit, and when we left Texas, that was a little hard. When my mom took us to school one day and we never went home. It took her. We went to abuse shelters a few different times. She tried different ways, and she would end up going back to them each time. So after, I couldn't tell you how many times going to different places trying to get away, she devised a plan, and we went to school. And at the end of the day, the head custodian pulled us into an office. We had no idea why. And we were told to stay away from the window. And when my stepdad pulled it up, he went out there and talked to him and said we had already left. We're still in the dark. We didn't know what was going on. And 5 minutes, I swear it was 5 minutes after he left, another car pulled up, and we were all gathered up into that car. It was a social worker that my mom had arranged everything with, and she took us to Salvation Army. And Salvation Army, they're not supposed to do this, but they gave us dinner that night, a night stay, breakfast the next morning, and then lunch. And my mom was arguing with the guy because he said, well, you guys aren't supposed to be here. I don't make lunch. And after some phone calls and everything, he goes, okay, well, I guess you're supposed to be here. And asked us what we wanted for lunch. We said hamburgers and French fries. And, that guy right there, there's such certain things that really just hold in your memory. So, he was one of them, very kind. And then we go to get on the Greyhound bus, and they hand us a paper bag of clothes each. And that's all we came to California with. So 2.5 days on a bus. We get out to La Mirada, stay with my great aunt. And but I will never forget being so happy in that bus driving away from Texas. So,
wow, what a story. And how old were you at the time?
I was 11 years old. And that's one thing. That was mainly the reason, but I told my mom that she was my hero many years later, but that was because of that. That changed the whole direction of our life. So
It must have been tough. I mean, not just on your mom, I mean, your siblings as well, but particularly your mom, knowing that she's got kids that she's got to protect and do something with. And it's extremely difficult to pluck up that courage to do something. You always, I think in the back of your mom's mind, she'd think, oh, well, maybe it'll be better tomorrow. And maybe I can change him. Maybe this, that, and other. And all the what ifs. But then years later, nothing's changed. If anything, they've got worse. And
it was a total of 10 years together. So you're right. It's moment after moment. And you just, some point, she got to her breaking point.
Yeah. But you said it was an abusive relationship. I mean, abusive towards your mum or the siblings as well?
Well, he didn't, well, I can't say that really. I remember my sister saying that she remembers him beating me over my rear quite a bit, and he getting madder because I didn't feel it anymore. So there was a lot of heavy like punishment, but I wouldn't say like hitting and abusing and grabbing and all that. It was more, we were his stepkids, so he treated us more like little laborers that would go out and do some hard chores, and just his girls got everything they wanted. And it was a model that I decided I promised my mom I'd be her good son and modeled myself opposite of him in every way. So I think you can take good and bad, and it just depends on how you look at it, what you decide to do with it that makes it good. If you can come from that situation in the right way, right, then I don't count it as bad. I can almost go to the point where I could say thank you for him because he taught me how to be a good man, with the opposite kind of example. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Perfect sense. Because it's a very similar story to mine, although the show's about you, but just digressing a little bit. Yeah. With my family, my parents divorced when I was 4. She married what was my stepfather at the time. And then it was 11 exactly as well when she plucked up the courage after years of abuse, physical abuse, and similar like with you, with us. And the next day we just took our personal belongings and left, never to be seen again. I mean, we went from the north of England to the south of England, where my mum had some cousins that we could stay with, and very, very similar. So I can really feel for how you felt on the bus. I mean, we did it on the train, and it was like an 8-hour trip on the train. But that moment of knowing that you're going after so many times similar to you, that hopefully this was the last time and we're not going to ever go back.
Oh,
and
it's over.
Yeah. And then kind of look back, and I look back, and particularly when you become a father, you look back at how you were treated as a kid, and no kid should ever be treated like that by anybody, let alone what's supposed to be your guardians, your parents. And then it makes you think about the way that you are with your kids. There are definitely lessons to be learned there, because it made me realize, likewise with you, what's the difference? I mean, kids these days typically don't see the difference. I mean, you can't compare if you've not experienced kind of that hardship. And I look at my kids, I don't want them to experience that hardship. But inside of me, I know that, but they don't know that. They don't feel that. They'll probably never, ever experience that. And particularly when you see them addicted to computer games, right, then it's same as you just reflect back on what it was like you as a child. And yeah, completely different situation and a different time, and something that, yeah, it's not good to expose them to that at the age that my kids are. But I mean, later they'll get to understand probably more about me, or maybe I'll write it in a book.
Well, I completely agree with you on that. You don't want your kids to experience that, but it goes back to what we said earlier, that, you know, there's two ways of learning. And what I would do is, when I would tell my kids stories of me growing up, sometimes I would shut all the lights out in the house and light a few candles and say, this is how I grew up. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have sometimes running water, or, you know, so we would take a night and do stuff like that. And I could tell them stories, or show them how we'd throw a sheet up over the side of the bed and do the shadow puppets, and, you know, different things that we would entertain ourselves with, because we didn't have some of the basics. And I think I can't tell you how it impacted them, but I feel like if they know where you came from, they can feel better if they experience it with you, at least to a point, because you obviously don't want them to go through it, but you also want them to be happy with where they are, right? So
No, absolutely. I mean, you don't want them to feel the pain, but you want them to understand that times were different, like when we were growing up as kids, to how they are now. But it's also, I mean, you could look at a broader picture, depending on culture and country. And yeah, I mean, things could be far worse or far better. So it doesn't devalue what happened to you. It just puts into perspective also, everybody's life is different, and what some people might think is no big deal, others think it's a catastrophe. So I mean, it's how the situation is and how you deal with it yourself as well, and also trying to understand it and get over it. I don't think you'll ever get over it. It's always going to be there, but you've come to accept it for what it was, and as you said, you learn from that. It's a great learning.
yeah, I can tell you, had a lot of those kind of hard lessons. Some of us can be stubborn, and you can ask most people that know me, I'm fairly stubborn. But I believe in walking forward, even if it feels like you're trudging through mud, because as long as you don't stop, you'll make it to the other side. So everything I do is geared to improving in some way. I mean, I can wake up every day and say, how can I improve? How can I do anything better than I did, right? And listen to what other people say to you, because a lot of stuff you won't pick up yourself, right? So I don't know. I could tell you about different things that just like roadblocks that try to stop you. As long as you keep moving, you're fine.
Yeah. So with your siblings, and you mentioned that, I mean, your two brothers, I mean, how was the connection between you as brothers? I mean, when this was going on, and actually when you left, I mean, did you create a better bond with each other, or how did that happen?
Well, my oldest brother is 5 years older than me, and so he was pulled a lot of time to go work with my stepdad, and didn't spend a whole lot of time with the rest of us. But me and the next one down, we went out, and all of our chores were shared. So one time we had a 3-acre garden, we had to hand weed, or it was, I mean, whatever chores it was me and him rotating. You know, dishes, they were all ours. So we got pretty close as kids, and when we came out here, we were still pretty close. I'd say my oldest brother was always just a bit more, because of the age gap, right? He was a bit more separated from us. I mean, we didn't have a bad relationship, but my three sisters, being their special little, being her father, their father, they were a little less. I would say we're not as close, but none of us. I mean, none of us disliked each other. We were all fairly tight because everywhere we went together. We moved so many times in Texas, mainly, that I don't remember finishing a grade of school from beginning to end. So, and I know there was one school I was in for one day.
Wow.
So, just different things happening. He was always into something, never finishing jobs, always starting. Very good at what he did. He just wouldn't complete things. So that was another lesson I learned, is to follow through and get to the end, right? No matter what you do. Commitment's now important to me because I didn't see that from him, right? Again, you take those positive lessons wherever you can get them, and you evaluate where you are, right? I can tell you, by most people looking at me, they wouldn't believe that I lived in a junkyard for a while. So I found it fun as a kid, though. You could go explore all the cars and, open doors to see what treasures you're going to find, right? So perspective is important. You can look at something negative or positive. It's your choice.
Exactly. So this was the kind of the time growing up with your stepfather. I mean, before your mum left him. What did you ever really get to know your real father?
No, that was a search that when I was 22, I'd searched for some years with no success. But when I was 22, I had gotten some contact information from my brother, who had moved back to Alabama. And I had the phone number and name of my grandparents. And I called them one day, and I had already talked to them, and they denied believing who I was and everything. But my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I had this idea. So I called up, and she answered. And she asked who it was, and I told her. And I just asked, like, he was just a friend. I said, "Hey, is Larry there?" And she said, "Yeah, he's right here. Who's this calling?" And I told her, and she gets off the phone. She goes, Gary's on the phone. Got everything messed up. Didn't matter, though. She called her son. At this point, I'd never met him, right? Not sure how I was going to feel because I didn't expect him to be there. That was the plan, but now it's happening. It's made it real. And he gets on the phone, and he sounded like Gomer Pyle. They were out in Arkansas, so he had that accent. And so I started telling him who I was and about my mom. And he's saying he didn't remember much of anything from back then. And he didn't deny me, but he really didn't remember her ever mentioning me. So it was it was only an 11-minute conversation, and we were planning on meeting. That was in May. And then I hung up the phone, and I remember about 2 months later, so I get another call from my brother that my real father had gone to a bar one day and got pretty much beaten to death. They killed him outside the bar. And I didn't know how to feel because, first of all, what kind of story was that? Two, I never knew him. So should I be sad that I didn't know him? There was so many mixed emotions. So at one point, the only thing that really helped me is I realized I'm okay. I already have a father. So I am a man of faith, and my Heavenly Father has always been there for me. So when he was murdered and I got through that, it was only remembering about my Heavenly Father that got me through that. So hard, yes, but confusing for sure. But then my mom wrote me a letter, and she told me the whole story of how she met my father, and I still have that letter to this day. So their whole relationship, they were only together for 6 months, and he was very physically abusive. So she had left him, and they tried again 6 months later, and they were only together for 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks is when I was conceived. So after 6 weeks, he left and she never saw him again. So that's the story of my father. I mean, where do I come from? Well, some people can be confused, but I know where I am now, so I'm okay.
Yeah, that's a massive story. So, I mean, it's terrible to find out. I mean, you've done all the kind of that homework, and you found out kind of the contact of your father. Never got to meet him, but then maybe that was meant to be. Maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't know about you, or didn't seem to be bothered about you, and so meeting him, would it have made any difference anyway?
No. And honestly, he sounded like an okay guy when we were talking, but he didn't sound like anyone important to me, really. So, like I said, after a little while of being confused, and then realizing that I was already in a good spot without him, yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah. I mean, it is quite ironic in the way that, I mean, what you're describing is, I mean, I grew up and live in a completely different country. I mean, I was in the UK, you're in the US, and we're sharing very similar stories, which are probably reminiscent of thousands, if not millions of other people, and very, very similar stories. I mean, I never knew at the time. I mean, how could my real father abandon three kids of his own and leave my mom on her own, and then not care about us when we were being physically abused by a stepfather, and we even called out for him to come and help us, and he couldn't be bothered. Right? We did later, which is slightly different to you. We did get the opportunity to meet him at our grandparents' funeral. Right? So he was there, and my mum still had held a light for him. So they did get back together for a short period, but it didn't work out. And we saw the true character that he was. And this was what my mum had already described. And he was true to that character, basically, that we didn't want. And in the end, we had to ask him to leave, and off he went. And then a few years later, yeah, had a shower, came out the shower, lived at his mum's place, who, I mean, had died, so he had kind of inherited the house. Came out the shower in his dressing gown, sitting on the sofa, and was found 2 days later. He had a massive heart attack and died on the sofa, alone. And it's terrible to think that, I mean, it's not just the hardship that we felt as kids, but also to the look at other people involved and parents. And I wouldn't wish that upon anyone, to die alone and just be a lonely person when they didn't have to be. But anyway, let's kind of move on. So you mentioned about schools. You went to so many different schools. So it must have been hard on the education, because I know when you move and you're trying to enroll into certain subjects, it's not always easy to get into those subjects, particularly if you don't necessarily start the school at the right time. And so you're kind of dumped into whatever's available. And then next minute, you're moving on again. So how did it affect the schooling and education?
Well, you're right, but we also think schooling now and then are quite a bit different. So, in Texas, they were very hard. My screen got dark, didn't it? Everything there was, it's a little hard to describe, I guess you say, but I would go from one school into the next. And sometimes, to be honest with you, I wasn't very motivated in doing my homework or whatever, because I didn't always know if I was going to go back to school anyway. So book reports or something that was long term, sometimes I kind of let them go, right? And I'll tell you, out of all six of us kids, I'm the only one that graduated on time. My sisters all went through a continuation school. My oldest brother graduated a year late, but that was all. My other brother, he just dropped out when he was in ninth grade. So it affected us all. How did I maintain my grades? I can't tell you. I've always been the kind that's good at just listening and picking things up. So the teacher would teach the things. I'd never take notes. I had put something in perspective. This guy told me one time is the way my mind works is a little different. He said, "Hey, Darren, you seem to go around the block to get next door." And I thought about that, and yeah, because when I do a math problem, I do all these complicated steps, but I do it faster than the guys that were doing the simple steps. So I've come to realize how to put things together. I'm a very good problem solver. And I think really that's probably the only thing that really saved me, because my grades never really slipped.
Yeah, that's quite amazing, actually. And yeah, I like that kind of go around the block to go next door kind of expression. I mean, sometimes there's a long way to do things and a short way, but sometimes you learn more doing it the long way because you understand it in more detail than sometimes taking the shortcuts. Because I know with my kids, when they're doing mathematics, I have no idea how they teach them these days. And I look at it and I think, I can't do it. I cannot show you how to do it that way. It just does not make any sense. And I kind of do it the long way, where it's clear, it's in front of you on a piece of paper, and even a fool could pick that up and figure it out. But they do it in another way. I have no idea. And
no, I told my daughter, I said, "You want me to help you with your work? I'm going to have to go sit in your classes with you for a while and figure out how this teacher's teaching." I agree. I don't see, it seems to make sense. They do it, but I look at it and it's confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing because my eldest son, I had a maths test, and it's actually that word maths and math. The Americans typically say math, and people from the UK say maths with an S. And there's a huge debate about that, but to me, it's maths. But anyway, so he's got his maths in front of him, and I am showing him, like, I can't figure it out. Try this way, and I'm showing the long way, right? And it makes perfect sense. So then he's doing it the long way, and went to school, had his test, and I could see the test result. I mean, he's writing it down on the paper, and he gets it all right. And the teacher's asking him, "Why have you put all these equations down there?" And he says, "Well, because it's obvious. It's there. It's easy." And I don't know how. Why did they teach them completely different? I just don't get it. I mean, is it supposed to be a more simple way? Because it's so confusing. Surely it's not more simple.
No, well, I guess it depends, because honestly, you have a way of doing something that works for you. I have a way of doing something that works for me, and your way may not work for me. So to say something simple or hard is perspective, right? Mm-hmm. When I say I go around the block to get next door, that's easier for me. But the guy that's looking at me thinks I'm a fool, and he just walks next door, right? So who's right? I think it's just different for different people.
There's kind of an expression here, because I live in Switzerland now, and you've got, in Zurich, they speak a version of Swiss German, and in Bern, they speak a different version of Swiss German. So completely different, right? But in Bern, they speak slowly, and in Zurich, they speak quick. And then there's always this kind of rivalry between them. They argue with each other, and then they say, "You speak too quick, and you don't think about what you're saying." And you say, "You speak too slowly." And they said, "Yeah, but I speak slowly because I'm thinking about what I'm going to say." And so it's kind of that going around the block. I mean, maybe to go around the block, you've got time to think before you knock on the door and open your mouth and just kind of picturing it and saying something. You've had that time to think about it before you've done it. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I got that lesson too about speaking a little slower, slowing down and thinking about what you're going to say well, actually, it was 2002. I had a pretty bad accident and ripping off this ear, and they sewed it back on. I was okay with that part, but it affected me pretty bad. I stuttered for a year and a half, and it was like everything I knew was behind a glass wall. I mean, I could see it, but if you asked me any question, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't retrieve anything. So I had to speak slower, slow everything down, think through it. I got over the stuttering after a year and a half. And then when I had gone back to work after just 7 weeks, as soon as they took off, actually, I went back to work with a cast on this arm still because I broke this one. You can see that I got a plate in there.
What happened then?
Well, you know how I'm in construction, and you go to work and you're safe and you do everything safely because you're trained to do that. And when you get home, you don't always implement those same things.
Mm-hmm.
So I had, well, I have to back up a little bit. I had another accident where first the lady came across the double yellows and hit me in my car. And so I was going through a little bit of therapy with that. It wasn't bad. I didn't total the car. It was just, a bit of a mess. So during the physical therapy, I'm sitting in front of the TV with my one son. My brother tells my other son to come up and hit your dad. So he takes this nice little stuffed Chuck E. Cheese mallet. I just got him for a prize, and he hits me in the ear. And my reaction, I hit him and knock him back, and I felt bad afterwards because he luckily landed on the couch. But then a bump started. So I had to go into the doctor and found out he had burst a blood vessel. So now I have cauliflower ear from my 6-year-old son. And I'm getting treated for that. I get released. And 5 days later, I take my motorcycle out. Hadn't been able to ride it for a while because of these accidents. My other son had decided to play Jenga in our garage and was crawling over boxes. I couldn't find my stuff. I should have taken the time, and I didn't. I was just going around the block, right? So I take the motorcycle around the block, and in the meantime, I see this little jump. I take the little jump, and I'm like, oh, there's the bigger jump. So I go to go up the bigger jump. I go, wait a minute, I don't have gear on. So I slowed down, and everything just went bad. And that's when I learned you either go all out or you don't, because halfway will get you hurt. And that's what happened. That bike hit a rock. It started shaking, and I should have let it go, but I didn't. I thought maybe I can hold this thing, right? Well, it turned me sideways, and I landed on my head and slid for about 8 feet. Ripped this ear all the way down. Went and saw the very same doctor. The doctor says, you must love me or hate me one. And he took a picture and put me on his wall as the worst case he had ever had. It would just look like a piece of meat on the side of my head at that point. But it affected me really bad in ways that were worse because, yeah, my ear healed. Yeah, the skin, all that healed. But to go from being someone that's fairly smart and on top of your game, you know, I had a good memory, everything else, and now I can't recall anything. Like I said, 7 weeks, they took the PICC line out. I still have my cast on. I went back to work. I had to support my family, and I opened up prints, and I was confused. None of it made sense. And this is at the time I had been in the trade for 6 years, and now I'm starting not quite ground zero. I had some of the basics, but I'm opening this up, and I had to start reading through and using those basics to try to just bring everything back as much as I could. And they said, oh, here's half the building, take half the crew and go finish it. I went, okay, so now I'm spending 14 hours a day and I'm trying to relearn everything. 2 years of doing this and retraining. And now I'm at another job, and they did the same thing. Here, Darren, go take these buildings and let's get these finished. And this guy looks at me, he goes, Darren, I got a big problem. Can you help me troubleshoot this? When that switch is up, the other switch works. But when that switch is down, that one don't work. It's a 3-way switch. I said, that's easy. That's your... And again, I could see it. I knew exactly what the problem was, but I couldn't tell him. And it was really frustrating me. And about 15 minutes of really, really struggling, the answer came to me, and I said, you got your 2 wires crossed. Just go fix that. And it was like the glass wall shattered and came down, and I got everything back.
Wow.
So when I went to the doctor, they said, your brain found a new pathway. So I overcame this big block and somehow got everything back. I went and took my journeyman's test. I got a 94%. Yeah, I was ecstatic. So you can't tell me you can't do something. If you can overcome a brain injury, if you can overcome, yeah, you can do that. If you try hard enough and you never give up, you can do that.
Yeah. I mean, from just the stories that you shared already, I mean, you could write a book on it.
Well, I thought about it because most people will not believe some of the stuff. I skipped one of the most important, the first things that happened to me. I was up in Michigan before I left. I was I was 15 months old. I just learned how to run. And my brother said he watched me do it. I came out of the house and I ran around the back and I tripped and I fell and I slid under the back tire of a truck and they ran me over. They were working. They didn't see me, obviously, but they ran over right here, side of my head.
Good deal.
And that doctor said that if I was 2 months older, I wouldn't have made it.
If you're 2 months older?
Because my head was still soft, so it compressed under that tire. And that's what saved me. So I was in the hospital for 2 months. And it was kind of strange that I got this little mark down here from an ear infection. That's the only thing that really happened is I had this discoloration that everybody thought was a birthmark. And it was really funny because I had it for 16 years and it finally went away when I turned 16. But it came back for 6 months when I had my first son.
As a reminder.
It was strange. And I noticed, I was like, wow, how did that pigment come back? But yeah, it came back when he was born for 6 months.
And it's gone now?
Yeah, it went away after that and I haven't seen it again.
And your ears normal, back to normal?
Well, they did say I could have the cauliflower ear fixed if I'd like, but I'm going to tell you that your ear has a big effect on your equilibrium, and I didn't find out how much until that happened, when it was hard for me to walk straight, and I used to be able to eyeball things level, and I couldn't do it after that. I couldn't shoot pool straight. And after I had to relearn all that, I said, yeah, you ain't touch my ear again. I'll live with this little deformed part. I don't care. So.
But you can hear okay.
Yeah, at first it was like somebody cupping your ear, but now that it's all kind of settled down, yeah, it's okay.
Wow, don't tell me anymore.
Oh, I got a few more. I was known.
Right. I want to get onto the book. Right. So let's just kind of catch up to where you are now. So you have your own kids. I mean, how many kids have you got?
I have 3. So I told you a minute ago about my oldest. He was born in 95, and I'd say how special they are, but you got kids, you know exactly how special they are. So then my younger son was born. He was born in 99. And tell you, as they grew up, I told my oldest he was like my strength. That kid was really strong, very smart. I think he was smarter than me by the time he was in probably junior high, really. He's really smart. Then I had my younger son, and he had I think he had all my stubbornness. He was very hard-headed. He knew how to play a game before opening it. He had his very special way of doing everything, and I had to tell him, you got to learn how to lead before you can lead, but you will be a leader. So, no, he's done great for himself. I couldn't be prouder. And then I have my daughter, and she came a bit later. She was born in 06, so 7 years after my son. And that put her at a hard place, I'd say, for her, because now you're so much younger than your brothers, and you don't get to go and do all the same stuff with them because, well, mom didn't want a little girl to go, and I can kind of get that. So as me and my boys are out there hiking and camping and all that, she got left behind for those times. But well, I'd say out of the 3, she's the most special to me for a lot of reasons. So,
right, we'll just park that there a minute. Right, I have 3 kids also. Right, so my eldest is absolutely gifted at a lot of things. I mean, he's way smarter than I ever was at school. It makes me look like dumb, right? I mean, and he's musically gifted. I mean, he plays the piano. So we tried different instruments with him, and he plays the piano. And I tell you, like, I thought I was kind of the smart one. I could play Away the Saints, right? Go marching in, right? And well, I couldn't really. I mean, I could play the first few notes, and I'm thinking, well, I can play the piano, right? And he's playing with two hands. He doesn't need to look at the music. He can memorize it all, although he reads music, and he's playing the most complicated two-hand things at the moment. I think, how the hell can he do that? He's only 10, right? But
well, I look at it. I look at that a little different, because you said you can do that, and he's so much better. But that's great, because I feel like if they can, I expect my kids to be better than me. My goal is to make them better than me. Take anything I have and learn from my mistakes, and just I would love to see you soaring through the stars. And so yeah, he's playing that piano like that. To me, I stand back. I'm just proud.
Yeah, I am. The thing is, I ask him to play for other people, and he won't do it. Right? So he'll play for me all night, but he won't play for other people. And then if he does, he fools around to make out he can't play. And I think, oh, that's good. And I think, well, that's not him playing. That's him being silly. But anyway, but I have then twins. So he's 10, and then I have twins at 7. So I'm another boy, and my daughter. And yeah, she is the youngest one because she was 2 minutes later. Right. I write about this in the book. So we always say Sam and Abby, because Sam was 2 minutes earlier. Right.
Well, that 2 minutes is important, though.
Yeah, it is. So she's the baby, but she's the bravest of them all. Not that she was the pussy. I mean, she feared everything. And when she was 5, you couldn't get her out of the house. She didn't have any friends, couldn't do anything. She didn't have sports. She feared it all until I started bedtime storytelling. And then I told her a story that changed her life. And she has no fear of anything. And it's funny, we went on holiday and she wants to do horse ride and stuff. So we asked her brothers, do you want to go horse riding? No, I'm scared of horses, right? And neither of them will do it. And she's doing it. And she says, Daddy, tell them the story, right? Because it worked on her. And yeah, I mean, kids, even though they don't know how you feel about them, it's the most magical thing you can have are children. And I don't know if they'll ever really appreciate what you've gone through and what you dedicate to them. And they just see you as dad. Just dad does that. And yeah, you just look into their eyes and you see them doing things. And like you, I'm humbled and proud of them. And yeah, it can be very emotional. But anyway, yeah. So that's.
I don't think there's any real words that you could say to tell your kids exactly how you feel. Mm-hmm. It just like you said, Dad, it just sums it up. And I wish more men would consider that, how important that word is to be a dad, and a good one.
Yeah. I found, we're just going to move into the storytelling, but I found bedtime storytelling with my kids was creating that, not just the bedtime story in getting them to go to bed, right? And it was kind of my job to do. My wife said, I've had the kids all day, can you put them to bed? And I thought, oh no, I've got to put them to bed. And and then we kind of bedtime stories starting, and then their own stories and their own adventures and stuff. And then we created our first book from that. And that created, the byproducts of that were an absolutely inseparable bond with your kids.
Yeah.
So much so that my wife started becoming jealous of it. And I think, don't become jealous of it. You do so many other things that I can't do, and I can't do, and I don't want to do. Right. But the bedtime story, leave that with me. I'm more than happy to do it. And it's not like 10, 15 minutes. It was going on for an hour until I had to like stop it, because I was falling asleep in the bed, and the kids are like, Daddy, where's the story? Right. but anyway, so you are an author. You do have books. So you've already written a book. So tell us, what type of books do you write? Why did you start writing books, and how did all that come about?
Well, I never was, as when I was younger, I didn't write much. Essays were a struggle. I was taught in Texas, keep things brief and right to the point. And so when I came out here, that was my biggest struggle. And when California wanted to expound and put all these details in here, so I would have never thought I'd write anything. And then I had a friend who was bored one day, and she said, "Tell me a story." And I'm kind of goofing around. And it's like, once upon a time, and she goes, "Get serious." I was like, "Okay." And I started with slowly she opened her eyes. All around her was darkness. All right. And the first two lines I gave her, she goes, "Oh, that's good. You should keep it going." I went, "Okay." Right. So I wrote them down, and I kind of had this little plan to write a short story. And then she was talking to my daughter, or my daughter found out somehow at least, and she goes, "Dad, you owe me a sentence a day." And I went, "What? I don't sit down and write a sentence a day. That's not how I work." So it's like, fine. Okay, I'll do a short story for my daughter then, right? So the character was totally different from how she ended up now, obviously, and I had these different thoughts, and I just jot things down and everything, and still being a superintendent, I was very busy at work, didn't have a whole lot of extra time, so it took me a while. I have to say 6 months, I had a decent story that evolved from a little short story into, I think I was at 90 something pages. So it ended up being a bit bigger. And I said, okay, this short story is going to become a book that I'm going to actually have it bound, and I'm going to hand it to my daughter, just my daughter. That's it. And my mom did start kind of pitching in with me, and she goes, "You're going to write me 5 books." I went, "What?" But she started talking with me about where to go with it and give me ideas and everything. And like I said, I was at the halfway point, and I'm thinking, okay, now I got some pressure. I got my mom wanting 5 books and my daughter wanting a book, and all this is going on. And at the time, I still wasn't really going to publish. And then some of my other family members are like, "Wow, you got some good values in here. You really should put this out to other kids too." And I was like, well, okay. But where do I go from here? I was kind of stuck, and outlines didn't help me. A lot of other things didn't help me. I usually just kind of, in any moment, a thought would come to me, and I'd write it just a section. It wasn't anything in order even. And I sat down, and I purchased an app to make maps online. And I figured, if I'm going to use their thing, I'm going to buy the license. So I did for a year. And I drew out this map using their system. It was a great system. And when I was done, I looked at that and I go, okay, so she started here. She went over here, and I started lining out the book, and with everything she did in that, and I mapped the whole thing out, and I was like, oh, this is great. And I just started writing, and I ended up writing the second half of the book in 5 weeks. I filled in all the gaps. I did all the things, and some of those little trivial, the little talks between the characters and all that. That was where I struggled the most, actually. And in it, I put everything I would tell. I would say my daughter, but I kept parents out of it for a reason, right? At the time, I was also going through a divorce, and it ended up being that I wanted this book to be something I can hand my daughter so she'd remember who her dad was. And it was not supposed to be anything other, just between me and her, right? But when I started putting it all together, and I got the map done, I got all those things done, I had submitted it for editing. And this lady I had looked up online, she had great reviews. She sends it back to me. She says, "You don't need a ghostwriter." I went, "What do you mean I don't need it?" I wasn't asking for a ghostwriter. I was asking for it to be edited. And I still had no clue where to go for publishing and everything. I'd kind of looked into a little bit, but she said, here's this guy I really trust. He's never lied to me. And to me, that's important. If you lie to me even once, I don't need to spend any more time with you because I can't trust you. So she gave me Paul's contact, and I emailed Paul in, and it took us a while of polishing. You know that process, because he wants it perfect, and that was hard for me because I'm in construction and things are done fast and deadlines are done. I had to kind of slow my pace down, but I'm very proud of this book and all the different lessons I put in and the different things, and I'm really hoping that I can get it into school districts. That's where my family said, you need to put this in schools. Kids need to read this. They have morals and values that you don't find in books these days. So that's the goal now. Just get the word out, and I would love to have good fathers read that and give a review and see what they really think of how I poured myself into this book for my daughter. I'd really love to hear that.
Well, it sounds excellent. Yeah, I would love to read it. So this first book, what type of book is it? I mean, fiction, fantasy?
I'd say it's a fictional book, a bit of fantasy in there that I just created a whole world separate completely so I could do anything I wanted, pulled out technology, pulled out all the different things that can distract people. And I said it in a time, a lot of people said like Lord of the Rings. I am nowhere near developed like Lord of the Rings, but I love what he did and how he did it. So I was like, honestly, you take someone that did something so amazing, why not take cues from that, right? So very simple. I wanted it to be more about a development of the characters and interaction. So this is, well, they do use animals similar to horses, but in a carriage, but there's no cars. And it's just the interaction between mainly 5 characters, right? All about how to approach different situations and the life lessons that go along with it, and it being a fun story. It's what I did with my kids. Everything we did was some sort of thing. I'd make work fun for them. To get my son to go to bed, I'd say, "Oh, I race you to bed," and he'd run in there, get under the covers. I'm like, "Oh, you won. Okay, now go to sleep." He'd all giggle and go to sleep. It made things so much easier when put a little fun in things. So
yeah, absolutely. No, having the fun. So the characters in the book, I mean, the characters as in people, animals, or?
It changed a bit because when I first did it, I was going to do it. I would say people, but a bipedal being with animal-like characteristics. Like 𝗙𝗍 originally was going to have like fur and be more of a like feline features, and then different ones and I kind of backed away from that. So they're all 4 races of human, you would say, and each with pretty good differences. Some people would say it's like the dwarves, elves, similar to the Lord of the Rings, where you have the 4 races. And they are separated into 4 different kingdoms. But they're also, there's a lot they went through. There was a war in the past, and now you have to drum up enough excitement, so you have to have things that happen and then real life situations. And so they're put on a quest, and that's part of the fun is going on the quest. But I also wanted kids to look at who they are inside. So not knowing how to do that, and I don't want to emulate magic and everything because there's a lot of popular stuff out there with that, and I wanted to kind of go my own little direction. So depending on your character in the book, you connect with a gem. So they learn that 𝗙𝗍, who likes to run into things without thinking, she's a bit ambitious. What's the word I want? Oh, I lost that word. I do that sometimes. There's still an after effect up here. So, impetuous. That's the word I want, right? Where she jumps in not thinking and gets herself in over her head at times. But as you mature in that same kind of thing, then it's actually you're courageous and you're unafraid. You jump in, you protect people. There's a lot to that. So she's the Ruby, which is a fighter, somebody that goes out and just headlong into things. And then you have me. Mine is the Sapphire. That's the protector. Someone who's going to guard, pretty much a guardian. And then, of course, I have my character. My daughter has her character. I put my mom to have a character in her, and there she has the Emerald. It's a healing ability. And it evolved more and more gems depending on characters. So you'll have a diamond in there. You'll have amethyst is in there. Obsidian is stealth and speed, which I gave to, obviously, the wolf. You see on the character on the front cover that he says riding a wolf. Well, that doesn't start in the beginning, right? So that was a scene that I did later in there that meant a lot to me. There's quite a few of those. You realize too when you're doing these stories sometimes that they take cues from your personal life. So there's the one that I do with my daughter and her brother, and he'll find this out later, but his name means something special in that book that I thought would be really cool. And I used Croatian language to kind of put different words in there. So I call like a chicken as a kip, and different things from those cues. Kovac I didn't know, but comes from a Croatian name. I can't tell you where I came up with it. It just came to me one day, but I met someone with the last name Kovacs, and that changed how things were. I named it Rising Darkness in Andalusia, and then I've met people that came from or lived in Andalusia. So that just blew my mind. I mean, here I am. I never would have even heard the word before, and now I'm meeting people that live there. So to get back to what I was saying is the gems are supposed to let kids look at who they are and then say, okay, what gem are you? And well, I do this and this and this, and it kind of helps them see little of who they can become, right?
I love it. I love it because, I mean, my kids love gemstones, and they pick ones that resonate more with them. So whether it's kind of a bluey one or a more pinky one or whatever.
And those are the official names, right? The bluey one. Yeah, I love when kids do that. They don't know the moonstone name or something, but they got their names.
They'll go for the kind of the pretty ones. Mm-hmm. But I mean, behind them, this is the story behind every stone, and then you can see the qualities and the properties of the stone and whatever. Does it match with you, right? Which could take us off on another journey, because we could talk about stones and crystals and things like that. But that's keep it on track with the books. So the first book you've already published.
Yep, came out actually on my birthday, August 16th, and it was the strangest feeling holding it in my hand for the first time. I think you may know that one already, just making it so real.
Yes, because I mean, we're doing a collective from previous guests. There's 11 of us in this first collective book, and we're all sharing our stories. So we hope to have it finished. Everybody's written it now. We just need to polish it and get it published. So we're right at that final stage now. So looking forward to that. But there will be a second book, because there are more guests that are saying, I asked them, would you like to be in a book? And they say, yes. So I've already got a list of people for the second book, but we haven't even finished the first one yet. So, but I've seen in the book group, I mean, other authors that I've had their parcel delivered and they've got their book out and they're smelling it and just feeling it flicking through the pages. And to know that that's something that was locked in your head for many, many years, in some cases, too many years. And then now you've got something, it's tangible. You can touch it, you can smell it, you can whatever. And it must be a magical experience. So it's a 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. So it's a great group in the way that we are meeting other authors and sharing experiences on the way. You could even write a book about authors meeting each other. I mean, there's so many things you could write about. I mean, it's a massive learning curve that you go through when you're actually writing as well. And it can be very deep and emotional and frustrating. And yeah, you go through all emotions, but having the final product. So now you've got the final one. You've got a copy there?
Yeah, the copy right here. So yeah, you're right. I didn't go through the smelling and the other things, but when you're holding your hand like this and then you see your name at the bottom and then you open this up and you're like, and you 5 years worth of work and polishing and everybody that has you've touched along the way that have been there with you that keep you going. And like a lot of times, I mean, I would drive down to see my daughter. It was every 2 weeks for the last 5 years. It's 6 hour trip. And for many of those trips, my mom and I would go back and forth. And we're talking about, okay, well, what are we going to do next? And my mom was hilarious when she gets into those kind of things. And so I say, okay, Mom, well, we'll take a trip this way. What do you think about? And we just bounce ideas back and forth. And then you sit down and everything changes anyway. And, you know, it's such a roller coaster ride but it's fun. It's really fun. And I've heard many people say, oh, I couldn't write a book. I said, why not? First of all, I don't like that word can't. That's a 4-letter word. You don't say that to me. If you choose not to, fine. You don't have any desire to, that's fine. It's all acceptable. Don't say can't, because you'll stop yourself from before you even get going. So
Yeah, I think everybody's got a book in them. Everybody's got a story in them. When people say, yeah, I'm not a storyteller, I'll say, well, when you have a dinner party at your house, do you ever tell stories about things that happened during the day or something odd or an experience or something? They say, yes. I say, well, you're a storyteller.
of course.
Just write it down, audio record it, whatever. I mean,
Well, you could take it a step farther though too, and say, okay, what did you do today? And they start recanting what they did for the day. I said, okay, well, change your car to a chariot. Change the guy that cut you off to some raider that's tagging. I mean, you could just change simple things, and you got a bedtime story for your kid, if nothing else.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love it because we do that. We use the creativity of our kids in bedtime storytelling. So it's always their marvelous adventure. And it could be anywhere. Made up things are even better. We even make up characters and we make up voices and accents and we audio record it, right? And if you just think, I mean, we've got at least 400 audio recordings of bedtime stories with the kids. And that's that memorabilia you could never get back again. I mean, you're capturing that time that is priceless, right? And they can all be converted into books, but at least we've caught them now on a recording. And which leads me to the question, because I know with Paul and publishing, he said that we can have a physical book, an audio book, and an ebook. So are you having an audio book as well?
Yeah, I was supposed to record that with my daughter. We should be starting that soon. I'm going to get with Paulin and see where we are with that. But the ebook's out, the paper book's out. I want to do a special edition, but it's probably going to wait until I have maybe the 3 or 4 together. Like I said earlier, I'm a third of the way through the second book. I wrote the ending before I even really started the beginning, because to me, you got to know where you're headed if you want to write a story. So the ending's done. I've gotten a little bit of feedback, people concerned, because I did actually kill off a character. So now I'm not telling who it is, and everybody's going, oh my God, it can't be this person. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it works. But yeah, I like the scene. I think it's a very important one. So I hope everybody likes that one.
You could always, yeah, sorry to interrupt. You could always say, you could write 10 different books or whatever, and you could always say at the end, the closing sentence, and then you woke up. The whole thing was a dream. And then nobody's really died in it anyway. So, but you can have so much fun writing these. And I think the first one is the hardest one to get done. And then once you've done that, I think you know the format now. But I was always taught in sales, right? Start with the end in mind, right? So you already have your, what we call to action, the desired outcome, right? So if you're going to a meeting, well, what do I want to achieve from going to the meeting? What's the outcome I want to get? What's my call to action, right? So if I have that in mind, to that is what I need to do in the meeting. So exactly in kind of writing a book, you've got the end, you've already decided on the end. Now you've got to work back. What's the story to get to there?
Yeah. That's how we do construction too. You got to know what you're building. So then you start backdating all the way through, and then you start building to get there. So that's the same process.
I guess it's just logical then. I never thought about it like that, but I like to picture things. But now you've said that, that makes perfect sense. You're not just going to start building in bits and pieces and see what you have at the end of it.
But that could be fun too. You ever take your kids out and you're like, look, we're going to build a fort. And they go, okay, Dad. So I give them a piece of paper and say, all right, make your plan. And they go, never mind, we'll improvise. Let's go.
Yeah. It's like we take the kids on a beach holiday and in the sand, right? Everyone's making a castle, but you can use your imagination. It could be a round castle, a square one, a pointy one, whatever. And what they create is magical.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you put no limits and you just say, you know what, just do what you feel. And then they start building and they build on top of that and they come up with another idea. And before you know it, you're just like, wow. Yeah. That's something worth remembering. Take that picture.
Yeah, we exactly. We've got those kind of building blocks, like a whole sack of them, right? And then you can turn them different ways around. You can build them, all sorts of things. And yeah, I try to keep things kind of straightforward and easy and square, right? And what they come up with, I think, wow. I mean, imagination. I mean, Einstein always said that everybody's born with an imagination and creativity. The problem is we lose it as soon as we go to school, right?
Yeah, well, you learn limits. You can tell the difference on how you build it. If you build square and all that, you learn limits. Well, there are limits, but if you teach a kid limits, teach them how to break the limits. Because there are things that are going to stop them, but that doesn't mean they have to. There's ways around it all.
Exactly. I want them to be more free. I don't, I mean, people say, oh, your kids aren't in the box. I'll say they were never in it to start with. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway,
boxes are meant to store things, not keep kids in.
Exactly. So moving on. So you've got another book, like you said, a third of the way that you've written. So have you got any dates in mind for that one?
Yeah, I was supposed to be done with the writing by December. I'm telling you, I'm behind. One of my bad habits is being consistent. I'm still a superintendent working and then doing other projects, way too many. Started my own company and I got to slow things down a little bit and make writing my job, making that more my priority. So I'm going to get it written. My new goal would be February and publishing by August. And I'm hoping to have one book out every year until the series is done.
And how many do you plan roughly in the series?
There are, let me get this right. There should be 4 books. And if they do well enough, then a prequel. Because I'm guessing a lot of people are going to want to know more about Kovac, his history, because he's not the focus of the book. So I never wanted to really get into his past. The focus is supposed to be Issa's journey, what she's going through, and then he helps her with it. So he's a support character, not a main character. But I've had a lot of people ask. So I thought maybe I'll do a prequel that shows where he came from and how him, without giving a spoiler away, him and I guess is fine if I give a spoiler though, right?
So your kids, I mean, how have they read any of it so far?
It took my daughter quite a while because she's got every rough copy that I've made. There were, I think, 16 total before the final manuscript. She's got the original and she's got the final. But let's see if it's been 9 months or 6 months. She finally read the whole thing herself. Now, she's gotten pieces along the way, so she knew the story, but she finally sat down and read the whole thing. Now, my boys, I have their signed copy here, but I'm going to mail it to them, hand it to them one way or the other soon. I know that I've given my oldest an early copy that he read, and he gave me some feedback on. And of course, each of them got their characters in there. His name is Eber, which is actually my grandfather's name, but in the book, I use it for my son's character. And then the most special name would be my second son's character is 𝗙𝗘𝗔𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗘𝗗. And it's a very interesting name that he'll find out later, I guess. But he hasn't read it yet that I know of, not in full.
All right. And your mom?
My mom got the first proof copy. She couldn't even wait for it to be released. So as soon as I had started and was able to get a proof copy, she had to have hers, her and my daughter both. So she's up there in her age. She can't really read the book so much. I got it on the Kindle and had her reading it with large print, but I've read it to her and she knows the whole story and she just is thrilled.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah, as part of the collective book, I mean, we're only doing 5,000 to 6,000 words each person, right? So that's been painful enough, right? But I sent it to my mum, right, so she could read it first, and she gave me, because we have this, as you know, we've got something in the book group called Testing the Beast, and we send it out and we ask for feedback, right? So yeah, my mum gave me some honest feedback, so I made some changes. But I mean, I trust in what she says. So I mean, she's the biggest admirer of it. My wife hasn't read anything of it yet, so let's see. So we plan it at the end of the year. So anyway, so let's kind of wrap this up a little bit. So how do we get hold of the book? Where is it advertised?
It is on Amazon, and I put it on Ingram Sparks. So when I searched, I actually found that it's on Barnes and Noble. It's on quite a few different sites. And I have a link in my Instagram, and then I also have a link in my LinkedIn. So I would say those are two best ways. I usually go through Instagram for almost all of it.
Right, excellent. So if you could provide the links, I'll put them in the show notes at the end, so people can just click on it and see. So, and how's the success been so far? I mean, did you do any big launch campaign or anything?
Well, we started with the basic launch, but I made some beginner mistakes on my dates and scheduling things because I didn't realize some of their deadlines, and I thought I had it right. So we're going to schedule another attempt at it here pretty soon. Paul told me to wait for a minute. We got to line up a few things. So that'll be coming soon. And with that, I wanted to start a promotion where I would love to hear what these kids come up with characters after they read this book. And the ones that make, I'm not sure exactly how to do this contest, but you can enter to win a character in the next part of the series.
Oh,
so the only real stipulation is you can't have red hair because only Issa's family has red hair. But if you've read that book and you make me a character that just feels right, then yeah, I'll put a character in there, and then you can just show all your friends that you got a character in a book now.
Yeah, excellent. So I was just going to ask the question. So typically the audience for this book would be who?
Well, I always said it was like 9 to 14-year-olds, and I had done a 10th grade presentation, and you can see actually some of the reviews on the back of the book are from some of this presentation. One of my favorites is he says, "Yeah, I loved your ideas. They were so slay." So, 9 to 14, and I've gotten reviews from people a little bit younger, but mainly older, saying it helped them too. So it's really been surprising me on the people that really get things from this book.
And it's available in English?
Yes, in English.
And will
I haven't
it
talked
be...
to Pauline. I haven't talked to Pauline about going other languages, but I'm definitely not opposed.
Yeah, I think possibly Spanish, because the US, I mean, they're kind of the second language there is Spanish.
Well, some of the workers I work with have asked for that. They wanted a Spanish translation.
And then you've got the South American market as well.
Yeah,
Which is...
definitely some we can look into.
Okay, so your story, Darren, you get called Darren, or you get
Yes.
called... All right, okay, because I got a good friend of mine, is Darren, but we call him Daz.
That's one name I've never been called. Been called many things, but not that
Yeah,
one.
really? Okay, maybe it's a British thing. Right. Anyway, so you have a remarkable story. I mean, personal story and journey. And I mean, we could have really delved into that and gone deeper, but I felt it was appropriate that we kind of moved into the book at the time, or would have been going on for hours, and yeah, quite personal. And the injuries you've had are, I mean, I wouldn't say amazing, but I mean, shocking. But you seem to have come out the other end pretty well, because you look quite normal. I mean, your ear's not hanging off, and having a truck run over you still got...
I don't know, though. I don't much like the word normal. It's like my daughter says, is we're weird and weird is okay. Weird is good. So that's where I'll stand is I'm off a bit, and I think it's just enough to be perfect. So now, thank you for that, because coming through all of that, yeah, that was a lot of work. And I would hope that, anyone that realizes that you keep moving and you will get through it, no matter how hard. So now I've met the most amazing woman. I've got all this stuff going on. I got these books going. Things are lining up really good. So yeah, I can see nothing but bright things in the future.
I can see that as well. And likewise with you, I mean, we've met some great people in the book author publishing group. So that's great. And hearing other people's stories is, I mean, it's a pastime for me. I love it. And you meet some fantastic people and some really kind of mind-bending stories. But yeah, everybody is kind of looking at things in a positive way, even though they've shared some hardship. But at least you've kind of kept the faith and moving forward. And
we got some great people in that group too. So there's a lot to learn, and I need to spend some more time in there now. So
yeah, it's hard because there's a lot of people in that group, and it's hard enough with me with my kind of 11 to look after, and having to keep reading theirs. But even with mine, I tell you, they never went into that detail when they were on the show. So the stuff there that's kind of a surprise to me as well when I'm reading it. And they'd never heard my story, which was quite unique, because as the kind of the interviewer, or the host, I should say, I never say interviews, not bloody interviews. It's a bit of fun talking to each other. So as the host, I mean, I typically never share my story, but there's always a bit in other people's story that brings something out, like yours. And there's something so close to kind of my childhood that, I'm just impulsed to have to share my bit because it's not dissimilar. And I think more people will resonate with that and think, oh, yeah, I have something like that as well. And that kind of brings people together.
Yeah, for 100%. I love what you're doing with your kids. That whole storytelling at night, that I wish I would have thought of that. I mean, yeah, I read to my kids, but I never thought to record them. And my second son, he was the best storyteller. I mean, I'll never forget his story of Dragon Catch the Train. He would just go on randomly. It was great. And I never recorded it. It was my bad. I really should have.
Yeah, but then, at least you've done something now. I mean, this book, do you think this book has also been kind of something, not just emotional, but it's something kind of a therapy in a way, that writing this is a bit of an escapism from maybe some of the hardship that goes on in the world, and it's a way to focus on something that is magical.
For sure. When I was a kid, I already had, like I told you briefly about my stepdad and all that bad situation. So I already had my world created back then. It wasn't Andalusia, but it was my own escape. So kids use it all the time, get away from things and put themselves in a safe place, right? So now I'm writing this and I'm so immersed in it. Someone will go to talk to me about it, and it's a merge. It's a whole real thing in my head. So I have to sometimes have them remind me of what part they're talking about, because I don't separate it the same way.
I love it. I love it in a way that, yeah, I can see everything there in a way that, I mean, when I do kids' bedtime stories, and we've created voices and characters and funny things and made up names, and the kids know that. So when you're with other people and they're talking about something similar, bedtime stories, it's not the same. And we're on excuse the pun, we're on a different page.
You're fully immersed, and that's awesome. That's where you need to be, because it becomes real here.
Yeah. So I'd encourage kids also to do that. So you mentioned earlier about schools and things. So, I mean, are you trying to plug this into schools and get kids to read, get the school to kind of sponsor this so they can have it in their library so kids can read at school? Or
that'd be my ultimate goal. Is I'm scheduling right now a time to come do another presentation, a follow-up presentation, my first one now that the book is done, and a book signing at my daughter's school. And from there, I'm hoping that to get to talk to the superintendent and some people to get it under review, and start getting it in schools.
Excellent.
So I'd be willing to donate it if I could. I mean,
yeah, I think sometimes you have to get things going, but it's all about creating that visibility, because you have a great product, and I want to read it. And my eldest son will definitely be one for reading this, because he's at that age and he's into these stories. So that would be something good.
I would love to hear what your son has to say about it, because right now I do have one 9-year-old reading it, and that's the youngest reader I've had so far, and the only one. So most of them are actually, some of the best feedback I got was from a 26-year-old lady, and she was supposed to be a pre-reader, but she went through and she wrote me notes through the book on how it made her feel, and I will cherish that book forever. Some of the notes she wrote meant so much. So I really would love to talk to kids in that age group to see what they think.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's into all sorts of different types of books, but this will definitely appeal to him. So we'll sort something out offline and see if I get a copy to him and he can read it and give a review. And
if you have Kindle Unlimited, I believe it's free right now if you do.
All right.
So the ebook is only 99 cents right now, and I don't know your market. I know it's in the UK. I'd have to check that part.
Yeah, I'll check it out. We can discuss this offline. Okay. So, Darren, you've been an absolutely wonderful guest, our 144th guest. So numbers mean a lot to me. So what could that be? 1 and 4 is 5, and 4 is 9. Right.
I also got 12 by 12, right?
Yeah, you could be, yeah. But I
I'll think
was,
through that. I like that number though, 144. I like that.
yeah, I like 144. Yeah. I think you could fit into construction as well.
Yeah. The one job I said I'd never do is become an electrician.
Yeah.
And I had my oldest son when he was a baby. He was 5 months old when I started. I had to support my family. So I became that one thing I said I'd never do and became an electrician. But it's okay. It's been good to me.
Yeah. Well, I think you've ridden a fair few storms and you've come out the other side very well. So
Thank you.
I admire you for the character that you are and for what you've achieved, kind of what you've gone through. For a lot of people, they just give up. I mean, you've kept with it. You believed. You didn't have this can't do it. You banished that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the book and also maintaining the relationship through the authors group as well. And looking forward to the next one. So on that note, Darren, have you got anything that you want to leave us with? Any final words or anything?
Well, this is everything a father would give to his daughter as far as advice or his child. And I'd say that I hope you enjoy reading it as much as I did writing it.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Darren. And I wish you a great success with that and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Wow, that was another Featured Business brought to you by Visibility Impact. If you'd like to be our next featured guest or learn how James Mofat can help you leverage on the art and power of interactive storytelling for your business, reach out and schedule a call now.